Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to the Optimal Physique Development podcast with Joe and Austin. We are up to episode 28. Thank you, everybody, for the great feedback on the last podcast with Dr. Scott Stevenson. You guys seem to love that. I did. I'm sure you did, Austin. It was my favorite thus far, I reckon.
Yeah, and Scott's such a humble, nice guy. It was funny the no God comments.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's humbling, isn't it? I think anybody that's ever had that call to authority, it is like a bit embarrassing. I mean, not like I get it, but
Well, I
like
mean,
when people say that, it's a bit like th th Scott's very much right that you shouldn't just listen to somebody because of their position of authority.
oh yeah, and I mean, we get it to an extent, I'm sure, but I mean, to me, about the extent of it is if somebody calls me coach, like coach instead of Austin, that's about as far as it needs to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we spoke about this the other day. I'm sorry for any of my clients listening to this, but I can't help but cringe when someone starts an email with "Hey, coach." I can't do it. It's it's strange. It's strange for sure.
But yeah, that was a really good episode. Definitely, we had as always, as expected, we went into some good topics and a couple personal things we could throw in there, like your personal anecdote and one client that I mentioned
Yeah.
that I'm working with that was hypogonadal. So yeah, there was some good stuff.
Yeah, that was really cool actually. I actually listened to it back to run back over that anecdote that you'd spoke about there because that was super interesting. And
Well, I'm actually waiting on, of course, he's has an appointment with the specialist to get the TRT and whatnot, but they're not in any hurry, as they never are. So we'll see what the endocrinologist or whoever the specialist and what they end up saying. I mean, obviously they're not going to be able to shed any light on the genetic stuff that we talked about. I highly doubt it, but I'm just curious to see what they say, because even his doctor was shocked. I mean, just by the numbers and no previous hormone use, it was definitely, and the amount of muscle that he had, it was definitely a weird scenario. So we'll see.
yeah, have to shout out Scott as well because after the show he did follow up and sent me through quite like a bit of literature on firstly on the naringenin use with orals that we spoke about. I mean, I'm not using any orals at the minute, but I did order some naringenin if I do ever use orals again, um, that I'll experiment with, um, and a few just general AR mediated stuff. So yeah, we've been talking a bit on there. So thanks for making the effort, Scott. Post podcast to send that all through to me. It shows his love for the subject rather than just the work of having to get on the podcast. So yeah, like we said, genuinely great guy, and it's had my brain really ticking, and I've been really thinking deep and going over a lot of old anecdote and case studies, and I found myself reading the old logs of Big Cat. Have you ever heard of Big Cat?
No, I don't believe so. What board was that on?
He was on quite a few boards. He worked for Mass under his real name, um, Alan Aragon's thing. Um, he wrote all the original anabolic androgenic steroid profiles for bodybuilding.com when they were still on there. His real name, I think, was like Peter Cole. Now he's dead now. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that he committed suicide. Um, but he was extremely intelligent in the world of hormones. To give you an idea, Chester Rockwell has called Big Cat his greatest inspiration. Um, from what I've seen. He posted mostly on GH15. I don't know if you're ever on GH15, but he had his logs there. But he is the only other person that I've come across with the same sort of tolerance to anabolics that I have. And I was reading through all his old logs and comparing our feedback notes, and they're unbelievably similar. I'll have to show you at some point. Really interesting. But he is able to explain it in a much more eloquent way. And this is something that I read years ago, but now looking back with hindsight, I understand it a lot more.
I
Um,
think, you know what though? I'm sure there's other people out there, but people are so stuck on numbers that they would never actually take enough to know that they fell into that camp. You know what I mean? Like they would see online, you shouldn't take over X amount of this or X amount of that. And they would never actually realize that they did need a larger amount, or that they didn't get side effects at a larger amount, or et cetera, because they would never do it.
yeah, quite right. Um,
Yeah. So,
yeah, the brain's been ticking a lot this week and digging into more androgen receptor mediated stuff and how to accentuate my own progress down the road and stuff, and reading big cats logs and profiles and stuff like that. It's been pretty damn cool. But that's what's been going on for me. So let's maybe talk, Austin, a bit about what everyone wants to know about your prep. What's been going on? Get us all up to date.
well, we'll go over it in more depth next week. We can make that next week's podcast, but
Yeah,
just to brief you guys before we get the guests on, I mean, everything's relatively similar at this point. It's literally been just a day-to-day calls. Like yesterday, weight dropped quite a bit. Uh, we added carbs in for the day, and we cut the cardio back some, not entirely, but some. It's literally been just audible after audible, which is cool. I mean, because you can't do that with everyone, but obviously I'm able to, provide the kind of feedback that's necessary to do things like that. So yeah, it's every day, like literally every day is different right now, which is just, which, you hear people talk about that online, but there's not a lot of people that can actually, for one, they're not lean enough and in tune enough to do it. And secondly, they don't have the knowledge to, or the ability to provide that kind of feedback. So that's
yeah,
it. That's where we're at. We're literally a day by day change. Went over some final week outline stuff, which is always tentative. It's everything's subject to change, but just as far as just some basic notes, we pretty much have the load down. So last couple days are pretty much hammered out unless something major changes, and then every day leading up to that will really just depend, like as far as when we pull the cardio out and all that stuff. So we'll see. But I
so
mean,
you are going to follow a kind of rapid backload approach.
yeah, it's going to be rapid backload. So our test run went really well. Um, Truthfully, probably could have done more.
Hmm.
And we may end up having to do more this time. The look was good and blood sugar was good. Everything was held really well. And a couple
You know
other
what?
little things.
For an unsolicited opinion on your physique, if I may, a completely unwelcome opinion. I always think that you look best about 80% full, 100% dry, rather
Yep.
than
Yep.
100% full, and then you start not quite spilling, but when anyone's dead full to the brim, most people,
I do spill. I spill.
yeah,
No,
it's that little. I don't know if I call it spilling from what I've seen. But you know what I'm saying. I think when you hit that about 80-85% full mark, but you've still got, because you're very grainy, you know, you can keep that. I always think that's when you look the best.
yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that
I'm
I think
glad.
realis I think realistically um my saturation point would probably be like I could probably hold 1,500 grams as depleted as I was. You know what I mean? Without because I could maybe hold 12 to 1,400, 12 to 1,300, and then obviously some of that depletes as you move around and train and all that stuff
That's
during
over
the day.
2 days.
Right. Well, no. It's only one
Okay.
day.
So, but if I remember correctly, last year you had to pull quite hard to make weight. As you're doing a rapid backload this year, is that not such an issue?
Okay. Well, so what we found out is this show's ran a little bit differently. We actually weigh in the morning of the show, which is extremely rare for the NPC. Typically, you check in the night before. So while it is closer to the show, it actually plays to my advantage because obviously I'm going to be a lot heavier the night after I rapid backload rather the morning after. And of course,
nice.
Oh yeah. So
You
for
don't have
me,
to go out and do some kind of big mixed meal and just hope that you fill out,
right. Yeah. For me, it's going to work well. I checked my weight, obviously I kept track of that when I did the load here. I was up, next morning. I think I was up I was only up like 2.8 pounds. So, but the night before I went to bed, I was up 9 pounds. So you got to figure I'd probably be fucked if we weighed in the night before. I would have to pull it hard again, which would that's just such a pain in the ass to pull off.
Are you keeping sodium and potassium pretty level through the load?
Yeah, the only difference is we'll shift a little bit harder to sodium. That's it.
You got a gram range that you're hitting?
I have to look, honestly. I'll try to get that information for you guys next week. So I have like better numbers for you, but I am shifting a little bit harder, and then obviously like the morning of the show is more sodium focused as well, and not really pushing as much potassium. There'll be some potassium in there, and then if I start to spill, like especially after prejudging and stuff, we'll tend to shift a little bit more towards potassium. It helps balance things back out.
Mm-hmm.
But
so were you watching your blood glucose over this load?
Yes. Yeah, I will.
How were you looking kind of fasted and postprandial with this kind of test run?
You want to know what's crazy? My glucose went up. My glucose only went up 9 points the entire day.
Whoa.
9.
With
Dude,
over a gram of carbs?
9. That's it. The whole day. And I'm going to talk about this stuff next week too, and we can kind of speculate while it's happening, but I'm literally going hypo, like harshly hypo on every cardio, on even steady state cardio, which is just nuts because it's not even glucose intensive.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I can barely make it through the cardio sessions. I'm like fucking sweating and about to fall off the bike. I had to stop last night. I had to stop and wait like 3 minutes to let my sugar come back before I could finish.
You always get like that, don't you?
It happened last year too. I mean, it's like just, yeah. I mean, the sensitivity is, and the crazy thing is I feel like I'm so insulin sensitive that even on meals that I wouldn't use exogenous insulin, like during the load, let's say the meal was 150 carbs, I would start going hypo between the, like my endogenous insulin release was so good and so hard that it was throwing me hypo.
I've got some clients like that where we would plan to use exogenous insulin, but we just can't.
You can't.
Yeah, not even a GDA.
No, you can't. Nothing. And I'm like,
but then some clients they can.
You can barely make it to the next fucking meal.
Yeah, I could at my state now. I could probably take like 15 units of Humalog and just not eat anything. Imagine you doing that.
Oh, dude, if I took 15, I'd be in trouble.
You'd be in the minus numbers.
Yeah.
That's funny as hell.
Our guys are ready to rock if you will get those gentlemen on and get the show going.
Man. Yes.
Okay.
Invite them.
All right, guys, we're here with our guests now. We have brand new IFBB Pro Marcus Wade and Johnny Casalena. If you guys don't know Johnny, he's pretty well-known coach here in the States. I know a lot of you are UK-based listeners too, but we do have some US listeners as well. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We actually haven't had 4 people on at the same time. So we're going to see how this works out. But Marcus had kind of an interesting prep with how things started and how everything panned out. We want to kind of go through the scenario today. You guys might find it interesting. It wasn't your typical 20 or 30 pounds over stage weight type of deal where, it's pretty much standard. So we're going to go over a little bit of that today. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, and I'll let them talk a little bit more, is when would you say, and Marcus, when would you say that you and I had talked about the health issues and stuff as far as the GI issues? What was that, 12 weeks out?
Yeah, I would say that was, probably about 10 to 12 weeks out from the state show.
Yeah, okay. So before we jump into this, I should have made it a little more formal introduction. I actually would have both of you guys introduce yourselves a little bit so everyone knows a little bit of background on you. Marcus, we'll start with you. Just give us a little bit of background on as far as how you got into bodybuilding, all that good stuff.
Okay. So for me, I grew up wrestling real competitively my whole life. I pretty much walked in a wrestling stance from the time I could walk. And, when I got out of high school and stuff, I was just really burnt out. And I signed with the junior college here in Oklahoma and never showed up. So that winter, I was just kind of lost on what to do. And I stumbled into a gym that happened to be a bodybuilding gym around here. And the lifestyle was just so much the same that I pretty much fell in love with it from day one. And, here we are 15 years later. But yeah, so I started when I was like 20 years old, and I think I pretty much had the digestive issues the whole time. And, just not knowing much along the way, I just thought a lot of what was going on with me was normal all the years until I got to a point where, I could hardly even function day to day. So, what I once thought was normal, I realized wasn't. And that's when, I started reaching out to some of you guys for help. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I got going with all this.
That's funny you mentioned the wrestling thing. That's almost identical to my backstory. I had a scholarship for wrestling too. And, I'm like, I can't do this. I was so sick of it. And I started bodybuilding. That's where I am now.
Dude, I can remember when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, my dad sending me to school with an apple or a bag of popcorn just to not draw attention and tell me to throw it away. I mean, so starving and suffering and doing all that was, that was just normal to me. Okay. But as I got older and got into high school, I just got tired of it. And, I just kind of dicked around through high school. And once I got out, I was just burnt out and quit. And then, glutton for punishment, I guess, jumped into the same damn thing again. But, yeah.
Yeah, basically traded one habit for another.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, so Johnny, let's get you in on this action a little bit. Like I said, guys, Johnny is a pretty renowned coach here in the U.S. I mean, you got some pretty high profile clients too. Maybe kind of talk to us about your coaching a little bit. Talk to us about your background.
Okay. Well, I started bodybuilding when I was about 15. I've loved it, but I'm not going to say I have the worst genetics in the world, but I'm not the greatest either. What I was, from a young age, I really realized that I loved learning. I loved science, and I loved figuring things out, more on an application aspect as well. And in the beginning, I didn't really know what I was doing. But the more I, applied it and got better and better, started helping people, and I just started producing champions. So, I mean, a lot of people know that I don't talk a lot. I'm not a big talker. I don't do a lot of shows. I don't really post much online. But like as of this weekend, with Marcus going pro this past weekend, that's my 45th pro card. So in 4 years, 45 pro cards, it's not too bad. Hoping to get 50 by the end of the year.
Impressive. Are you chasing that Bakary number?
I'd love to. If I can get to that number, man, and surpass that would be great. But like I said, I'm never going to brag about it. I'm never going to. I'm mentioning it here, but you'll never see me post that kind of stuff online. It's just not my thing. I'd rather show the work Basically, I just keep quiet and let the results speak for themselves. I don't need to like go walking around like. I feel that coaches who go around and telling everybody how good they are or how smart they are and crap like that, I think it's just more of. I think they're trying to draw attention to themselves, or I don't really know. Maybe they're insecure. I don't know. So that's just never been my thing. So I'm sure I would have much better marketing, and if I did talk more, I just don't. So that's something maybe I should work on. But all in all, I mean, I just really love what I do. I love to help people. So sometimes, like in Marcus's case, he didn't come to me originally for a prep. He came to me to help him, because he said he had these issues. And I know he talked to you. He talked to me. So we kind of just jumped in really to just get his inflammation down and get his gut working efficiently. And I've had other people just come to me for problems, and then it turns into a prep from there, and a pretty successful one at that. If you kind of see what happened with Marcus.
Yeah, and he has some clients that some people might have heard of, like Shanique and
yeah.
But kind of to expand on that, if you don't mind, I just jump in here, Austin.
Yep.
It's just a good point. It's just a good time to kind of take off here, I think, from what he just said. But going back to the point he's talking about, you're also really aware of this. I had reached out to you about, running my health supplements and stuff like that, because I found myself in a place, late last year from, I would say, August, September to the first of the year, I'd let my insurance lapse, and I was just kind of trying to fight it and wait till I could get into a digestive disease doctor. And, it just kept getting worse and worse. And, this was over about an 18-month period from about 6 weeks, I would say 6 weeks out from my nationals prep with Jansen in 2016. It really started basically rearing its head to a point where, it went from just like your everyday heartburn and dealing with issues that, most of us deal with what we do here and the way we eat. But, it got so much worse with all the transverse colon issues and the crazy chronic gut pain and being bent over and stuck in bed for a day or two at a time. I mean, through November and December, the flare-ups would happen more often than not. And like I said, it was like every 2 weeks I would spend 48 hours in bed just rolling around, grabbing the sheets, moaning and groaning. So it got to a really, really uncomfortable point to where I was just really depressed. And, there were days I was lucky if I get 2 solid meals in and then some shakes. And, and that's kind of how my whole off season looked. So I had no intentions of competing. I didn't think I'd added any tissue. The only variable that was intact was my training. Everyone that knows me knows I'm going to train regardless. And sometimes, it's probably a double-edged sword. Sometimes I do overtrain, I'm sure, but it's just who I am. No matter how I'm feeling or what I'm doing, I'm not going to miss workouts. And that's been a 15-year thing. I mean, I bet I've missed less than a handful of leg workouts in 15 years, including the time I was locked up. So, I mean, other than that, though, nothing was right. I couldn't eat. I hadn't ran anything significant in, a year's time. And, I was still trying to work with Matt. And we were just struggling, trying to figure out what was going on with. And in his defense, I wasn't able to go to the doctor yet. So, I mean, we were really just in limbo for a really long time. And I think he got tired of, sending plans and wanting me to do this, that, and the other that I just simply couldn't do. And again, going back to that, like I said, I have nothing negative to say to him. I think Matt's an incredible coach. We're still good friends. And like I said, working with him was really great. But when I contacted Johnny, it was about the same time you had been helping me with my with just the supplementation side. And I knew he did a lot of keto stuff with a lot of his female clients and stuff. And so I contacted Johnny and just was like talking to him about doing a keto plan just to eliminate, all inflammatory responses and just take carbs out completely rather than trying to guess at what was causing me problems in the off season. When we're not going to be as strict with the sources anyway. So I was like, why not just go ahead and and just take all the carbs out, do this keto phase, try to address this inflammation. And then we can start bringing carbs in one at a time to figure out what's going to work with this allergy autoimmune thing and what's not. And, we got started with that. And, probably 8 weeks in, I'm eating 6,000 calories a day keto, and I'm down 15 pounds and probably floating around 5 or 6% body fat. And, feeling good again. I could tell I was absorbing food. Before that, I would eat meals and I would eat and I'd feel empty immediately. Before I'd go to the gym, I never felt like I'd eaten anything. I wasn't absorbing anything. And so I felt good, and I called him and I was like, our big state show's 4.5 weeks away. I'm pretty lean right now. Haven't been running anything. What about if we just went ahead and switched things into more of a prep phase, start bringing some stuff in and kind of see what happens. It's going to be short term, so I don't think it's going to have a big adverse health issue anyway. So he agreed. We tried it. Instantly started making crazy results. I started that prep at 218 pounds, and I weighed in at the Oklahoma at 222, and then at 220, I'm sorry, and then weighed in at the Universe at 223 on 2 fat meals that day. So, we gained a ton of tissue during that time. And, and so everything just went really well. My stomach worked really good those 6 to 8 weeks between the 2 shows, and, here we are. So,
yeah, and I'm sure Johnny will agree too, because, and I think right about that 4-week point, you pretty much had went over fully working with Johnny at that point. But I know from what you were telling me, you guys started doing keto because you and I had talked about just systemic stress from training and just mentally not being in a good place and all the information.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy, man. Is like I said, and you can vouch for this. I had no intentions of doing a show this year, period.
Right.
I just wanted to feel better again, man. My back was against the wall. I was depressed. My mentality was fading like crazy.
I remember telling you when we started the keto phase, I said, Marcus, just want you to know, the way we're setting this up isn't necessarily set up to add muscle tissue. And I said, I just want you to make sure you're okay with this, because I said, I really want to make sure we get you healthy before we even think about any of that. And you were like,
absolutely.
Game. So
yeah, and with me, I've spent so much time over the years, like, making my physique having to be the first priority. That, with how bad I got, I finally was in a position to accept. I don't really care where my physique goes right now. I just want to feel better. And it took me getting really bad to get to that point. And so I was 100% there. Like I said, once I finally got my insurance set up and got to the doctor and got diagnosed, that was the same thing. I didn't care. I was scared to go because how we are. When you start having all these issues, you start thinking the worst. But I got to the point where I didn't even care. I just wanted to address it. I wanted to face it. So when I contacted you, you were like, I remember you telling me, you said your physique's probably going to actually fade some. You're going to be less full.
I remember telling you, you're going to get peeled, but you're going to lose fullness and roundness too.
Yeah, you said you'll be way less round, and I was like, oh, great. But
so honestly, like when we started, it wasn't by any means a prep diet, and it wasn't addressed to do that. But inadvertently, you went from you're never fat, but you went from a higher percentage of body fat, and by the time we were done keto, man, it was like we might as well have just called that prep.
Right.
Even with 6,000 calories, it was just torching his body fat.
Well, what a point that I was going to get at is, and you guys actually talked about this a little bit before the show, is that goes to show how extremely important it is to have all body systems functioning, because
100%. Yes.
Once, okay, so, and it was the cascade effect, because once stress went down systemically, like mentally, you were in a better place. You felt better. You're obviously more motivated. Once the inflammation went down, obviously you started partitioning nutrients again. So now you're eating 6,000 calories, but holy shit, like you're getting leaner, and now your training is better. So it's such a snowball effect. And like we talked about before the show, There's just so many people out there, whether they're working with a coach or not. And I'm not pointing fingers at any coaches or anything, but there's so many people that walk around functioning suboptimally, and they wonder why, this isn't working or this isn't working, and it's just because there's stress. I mean, that's what it is. It literally is just stress on your body in one way, shape, or form. And once you get that fixed, it's incredible how the body can.
And a lot of times the problem is a lot of and I'm not saying, I'm not, like I said, I'm not pointing at any coaches or anything, but without certain knowledge and knowing things, some of these people think they're pigeonholed to do things in one way. And that one way might not be optimal for what that person needs. So, while I would normally start somebody's prep the way I started Marcus's, for his I needed to. So, you have to really change your approach based on the individual. It's not a style.
Yeah. If you guys, I was going to say, if you guys want a good, another good instance of this, like I said, if you ever go back and listen to the other podcast, you ought to listen to Joe's story here. He had probably like the worst inflammation, systemic stress that I've maybe ever seen starting with anyone ever. He was hospitalized twice.
Wow.
It was bad, but yeah. That was really my takeaway, but I'm not going to cut in on you guys too much. Keep going with
I'm glad you said that because, like I said, backtracking some, at the point where I was at when I contacted you, I mean, you and I both agreed without seeing labs that I was probably in some bad adrenal fatigue just from stress levels being so freaking bad, letting things take me down so much. And honestly, addressing that, coming out of that, just getting my mind back in the right spot, I can just feel things starting to get better. So I'm sure, in my situation, the stress probably was making the digestive issues 1,000 times worse. And once was addressed, everything else started working better. Then we kind of got the inflammation thing in check. And next thing you know, things are clicking in all cylinders again. And we're not even pushing drugs or nothing else, but my body's started responding better than it has in, 3 to 5 years just on simple food from not being so stressed out and everything. And then fast forwarding from there, I'm just a huge stressor anyway. I've always told people I don't know how to have fun. I don't know how to enjoy life. Like I'll make anything a stressful situation. And so
he really does too.
And I told Johnny, after the Oklahoma, I remember telling him, and then after the universe that, I just was trying to thank him for everything. And I was letting him know, like, man, I want you to understand how big of a deal it is because in 15 years, I've never had what I would call a fun peak week or fun show weekend or whatever the hell you want to call it, because I'll make everything miserable by stressing every single detail and driving myself nuts that when I look back, I'm just this fucking stressed out, psychotic mess.
No, I didn't allow that to happen.
And then with this prep here with him, he was down here with me at the Oklahoma, and then I was up there at the Universe, and he kept me completely calm and zero stress levels the whole time. And then after the show, looking back, not only did the outcome obviously speak for itself, but from a life standpoint, it was they were both experiences that I enjoyed, and that was huge to me because I'd never experienced that before. So, I mean, if I could give anyone any kind of advice as far as with your prep or what have you, it's not let the small things pile up and become so important that you miss sight of everything that actually matters. Because, I mean, that's something I've always done, and now looking back, it's just like crazy to me to think how much I ruined over the years by stressing about things that I really either couldn't control or, in the big scheme of things, didn't make a fuck. Like, who cares if your color's a little bit off, or if I left a little bit of hair under my left pec, or when I was shaving, or something that was so small and minute that I turned into this big fucking ordeal. And this, I just didn't let things like that bother me this time. And not only did I have fun, but I mean, I really feel like the total outcome by keeping my stress levels down, my physique was just so much better in the end from it too.
Well, you had basically, we didn't allow any cortisol response to happen.
Right.
So there was none of that occurring, which normally, based off of your looks at previous shows while you were peeled, everybody knows you get in shape. You could clearly see that there was a cortisol reaction because you didn't stay calm. You can see it in your physique. It just wasn't as refined looking as it was this weekend.
Right.
And I mean, you can see. I mean, you can without an off season, you competed. You were basically on stage. I remember before we got you on the scale. So not weigh-ins, but actually on stage, you were close to 227 pounds.
Yeah,
So,
I was like 12, 13 pounds heavier than my national stage weight, and that was with the off season that you guys know. I mean, now know. I mean, I was sick
with no
the entire
off season.
time. Exactly,
So,
no off season.
So that goes to show that your prep, the smoothness of it, and how we did it. It just was just favorable for your body,
Absolutely.
And mentally, a lot of people take out that whole mental aspect, and that mental aspect is huge. It's huge, especially at the end.
Well, and you guys too know, and anyone listening, that coming out of a prep, your mental state can be, tricky. I mean, just adjusting back to normal life and just trying to go about your day-to-day business, coming off of being such a structured, everything being to the minute, basically, to coming out of prep, and now you have all this time, and that everything just isn't as on paper by the minute as it was this whole however many weeks previously, and that can be difficult. But without being all stressed out and crazy about things like I have been in the past, it's just been like a normal week for me. Normally I'll go through like a little bit of a depression phase for like 2 weeks trying to like adjust to it, and I haven't experienced any of that this time. So yeah, I mean, it's just been a really, really good experience.
And what I tell people all the time is that because I have admittedly I'm similar personality as you, and I think that's why we hit it off on the whole initially, as far as like getting the stress and emotions under control. But
yeah.
If you take somebody, a lot of us that do well at this lifestyle, we're type A, you know what I mean? We're neurotic, we're OCD.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's like, we're going to do this shit anyhow. We're going to eat our meals. We're going to train. We're going to do everything just right. So we don't, and what I try to get through to people is you don't have to be miserable while you're doing it. You can
exactly.
I said, you're going to do it regardless. You're going to get your stuff done. Why not try to enjoy it? Why not have a little bit different perspective on it? Because like I said, at the end of the day, the result's going to be better. You're sure as hell going to enjoy yourself a lot more. And look, you still did every single thing that you normally would have done. You just weren't fucking miserable the whole time.
And that's it, man. And like I said, I was getting to the point where, I do this because, just like you said, because I'm type A. This is something I've been working at for a long time. I'm going to fucking do it. So, but I didn't enjoy it anymore. It was, people would be like, I can see how much you love to train. And I tell people all the time, it's like, it's not so much that I love to train, it's that I hate not training worse, And this is all I know. And if I'm going to train, I'm going to fucking train hard. That's just who I am. But to actually enjoy this and not be stressed out about it and kind of fall in love with the sport again has been a game changer, man. And like I said, and that's reflected into all areas of my life, as far as my coaching or my personal relationships at home and just different things like that. Everything, I can look back. It's crazy because it's just a few months ago. That was just in like February, March. I was talking to you, Austin, and I was fucking 10 steps from wanting to put a bullet in my head, and then here I am now, like grounded and in a really, really good fucking place. And we're talking 90 days later. I went from not even wanting to compete to here I am, just on my pro card, looking at what I'm going to do next year. So
yeah, you were. When we talked on the phone, and I know a lot of the listeners know I have a psych background too. That's originally before when I was in school, formal education. Like I wanted to be a psychologist, so I love this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But I could just hear, like, you sounded positive on the phone because I think just because you were talking to somebody, but
right.
Like there was some desperation in the voice,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm like, man, it's, we need to get this shit under control. But that's awesome.
I mean, just being transparent with you guys. I mean, And like I said, I never would I ever even think about, like, when I just said putting a bullet in my head. That was obviously just a phrase, but I was fucking miserable, man. Like, if it wasn't for my son, I would have been in as dark of a place as I could imagine. Like, I pushed so many relationships away. My business was like kind of falling apart. I just wasn't happy. Nothing was working right. I mean, I felt like the whole world was stacked up against me or sitting on my shoulders. And, you know, and when I reached out to you, I was 100% desperate. I didn't know what to do, where to go. I was reaching out to people left and right, just looking for answers, looking for help. And like I said, I'm super thankful for you for that, because you really did help me identify with a lot of, like, just triggers, you know, that I needed to be aware of and start working on simply with that. And then just from a supplement standpoint, you really helped get me on track. And then from there, you know, things just started snowball affecting in the right way. And it's just crazy to look back, you know, 90, 120 days ago, the mindset I had, and then just how my whole outlook on life in general, opposed to, you know, now, which this is more me, you know what I mean? This is who I am. And to look back and see that guy that I was just a short period of time ago, it's just mind boggling to think how fast it's kind of worked itself out just by shifting my mindset, making some changes and getting some stuff in order, you know? So,
you know, this isn't necessarily where I intended this interview to go, but this is really good. I think this is gonna help some people, because there's a lot of people out there in the same boat. You know, you'd be surprised. There's a lot. And before we go completely off into the philosophical side of things, I did want to hear a little bit more about, you know, we're at that like 4-week out point now from the Oklahoma State state show.
okay.
So how did things, because I mean, you're already in condition at this point. You're basically leaner than everybody already. So like, how did things pan out? Did you guys have to increase food? Was it pretty stagnant? I mean, give us a little more.
Let me ask you real quick. Is this am I pretty open to speak here in terms of everything?
Anything. Yep. Anything you want.
Okay. So just to be completely transparent with you, we were 36 days out when I called Johnny. I was still just running TRT. No, I say TRT. I was running 300 milligrams of Cest. You know that you were helping me. You were helping me with everything, and that was it. And so when I called him, you know, I told him, I said, here's the deal. Our biggest state level shows coming up in 36 days. I've been basically off any big beer runs for, you know, longer than I can even remember. We've had all carbs out now for, it was like 7 to 8 weeks at that time that I've been on the keto. I was like, so here's the deal. I've never won this overall. You know, I've been big in the NPC in the Oklahoma for a long time. I feel like it'd be crazy if I don't ever win this show in general. I need to qualify for next year. How do you feel about go ahead and going into like a prep phase, starting some drugs, and just seeing how this turns out? And Johnny was 100% on board. So from that day, I mean, he sent me a plan that day that we switched that next morning.
I just said I need to see how your body reacts. I said if it goes in the opposite direction, we're going to cut the prep.
Yep.
I said we're going to cut it that day. I don't care. Like I don't care if we're 5 days out. If your body starts tanking, we're taking you out. And he's like, all right, cool. So what we did basically is I spun him out of keto, and basically I prep people very, very differently than most others. I'm not going to call it a style, but I believe things need to be in a cyclical approach, and I don't mean that in terms of carb cycling or fat cycling or any other way, but basically I like to create an environment where the body's constantly craving and uptaking. So the way I set the diet up is to do just that. So basically, I had some basically higher carb days for him. For Marcus personally, basically we had some higher carb days where it was carbs throughout the day, and then the peri-workout carbs remained the same basically through the week.
But then the days that were lower on carbs, the calories were replaced with fats, besides peri-workout. We basically did that, and then the last 5 weeks or so, every single week we did a 2-day, we'll call it a refeed, but it wasn't, because it was every week, you can't call it a refeed. It was just part of his plan. And we watched it in different weeks. We'd go a little higher. Different weeks we'd keep it where it was at. And it would be Friday into Saturday where we would set that up. And then basically for people, Austin, I know you know this stuff. Marcus started picking up on it after I did it with him. But a lot of people, will carb load for 2 days. And in some body types that does work. In my opinion, it doesn't work as good with most people, especially people with inflammatory GI issues. So what I tend to do is I fat load. Let's say the show's Saturday. I fat load them, or Marcus specifically, fat load them pretty hard through Thursday. First meal on Friday, still fat. If I see what he looks like, I may add some carbs there. Then I'll go like meal 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 through Friday with a carb load, and then back to doing a carb fat mix the last 2 to 3 meals on Friday into Saturday morning.
Joe, does that sound familiar? Do my
Sorry, I'm quiet over here, boys. I'm just kind of taking this all in.
Well, and then if I can chime in here too, and from my experience with my issues, and like I said, guys, like looking back now that I know more, and once I realize okay, dumbass, you have a fucking problem. This isn't normal to feel the way you do and be bloated all the damn time. But looking back, I have it's like a compound effect with me. So like when my issues start, if I just keep beating on it, it's like the inflammation just gets worse and worse and worse to the point where eventually I get to where I'm just shut down. With this approach, the way we did things, I would have. He left out that on one day a week we had a 0 carb day that was backloaded behind my high days, so it was just like a fat burning day. But what on top of that, it also was like a GI clearing day. So like my issues never got real bad. The way we were cyclic with everything. If I started having any issues, by the time I started noticing anything, it was back down to like a low calorie time. My gut would clear out, and then it would be back on like a base diet type thing. So my stomach never really caused me a lot of issues this whole time. Yeah, sure, I would still get my heartburn and stuff on these big calorie days and stuff. But it never went beyond heartburn. So for me to not be bloated all the time and to constantly feel like my absorption rate was just perfect, I could literally feel my body taking in nutrients, and I could feel myself growing during prep. Like I said, I started 5 pounds lighter than when I finished, and probably
hence what I said. You want to create that environment for craving and uptaking. If you set the diet up properly, your body will always uptake the nutrients properly if you set it up. So the whole goal for him was to set that up, so especially more than other people, because his gut will blow out. So we had to set that up to make sure. And so I was in contact with him a lot. On top of it, he's one of my best friends. So, I'm even in contact more so than even, other people.
Right.
So I was like, all right, this food's good. Okay, cool. So we basically found certain foods and didn't stray from them too much because we knew what worked for his body. And that was
the funny thing is, I would say we probably used 6 cups of jasmine rice the whole prep.
Yep.
I fucking ate 500 fucking deals of fucking English muffins. English muffins were nonstop. And it just worked. They didn't cause me any problems, so we went with it. And
yep.
And that it just worked really well. And we had to do that with a few different things. We try foods, and I would be quick to know, hey, listen, dude, this is causing a little bit of an issue, and we'd pull it immediately. And then coming out of the Oklahoma, after that whole loading phase and everything, and then having a meal afterwards, and this universe thing was hell. We were driving up to Tulsa, which is about 2 hours from me, for weigh-ins, and we were just in conversation. And I told him I turned 35 in May, and he looks over at me real fast and is like, you're 35? I was like, yeah. He goes, okay, so we're going to go win the universe here in like 3 weeks. I was like, I'm not doing masters until I'm not progressing anymore. And he looks at me, he calls me a dumbass, and he hits up Andrew Vu, and Andrew Vu's like, Marcus, you're a fucking idiot if you don't go up there and do it. So that Sunday, I was driving him back to the airport. I was like, man, if you're serious about the universe thing, we'll go ahead and make a run. He was like, absolutely, I'm serious. I really think you have a really good shot. I really feel like you'll win the show. So, that Monday we got started and back at it, and I started having a little bit of digestive issues. That week. And so he had me adding in a few more things. He noticed that it was a lot because of how much fat we'd eat, and I started using some ox bile with my fat meals. And
I wanted that, and then do you want to? We can give the little thing.
Yeah,
I think this will help a lot of people. I wanted him to do. I like to use this to basically calm down people's stomach. I noticed it helped me a long time ago, so I started, implementing with clients that have issues, especially him. And as soon as I gave this to him, I'll tell you what it is in a second, so everybody can write it down or whatever. And he was like, "Wow, that's like it's magic." I said, "I don't know what it is, why it does it. I mean, I have an idea of why, obviously, but why it works so fast, I can't tell you." So basically, I said, "I want you to go." The main thing. I said, "I want you to get." Because we did a lot of egg white shake meals. He does very well with them. So what I said, on top of your egg white shake, I said, I want you to put in a scoop of Fiber Plus by AD. And I said, I want you to do a scoop of Miracle Reds, which is basically it's a polyphenol product. But taking that together, shake it up, drink it back, and, you can have it for one of your protein meals. But I told him I want you to do that twice a day, on top of other GI supplements to calm his stomach down that I, advised him to use. Which I know Austin, he's like, oh, Austin already had me use some of the stuff, so he already had it. So basically we were all on the same page with that, but I think that we ended up using that shake from the day after the Oklahoma all the way up till the day before Universe. We used it for like 2 meals a day.
I've had 2 today. I'm telling you right now, if you guys aren't taking notes, I highly recommend you go ahead and write this down. Miracle Reds, 14 to 16 ounces of egg whites, shaken up with AD's Fiber Plus. If you're having any kind of like significant digestive issues where you can just tell your stomach's bogged down, that shake right there has been wonders for me, and it'll be something that's a staple in everything I do from now on. I mean, it's really, really awesome and how fast it works. So
I remember because I was at the gym mid training, and he texted me kind of in a panic, like you said. You can feel the desperation. I cut my workout. I call him immediately, and I was like, "All right, I need you to get this stuff now and drink it." And then the day later, he's like, "Oh, I feel a lot better." I said, "Okay, good, all right."
And then Austin, I want you to know, buddy, all of our supplementation that we did, that's still what I run today. And I ran that for the entire prep.
I wanted you, so there's one thing that I wanted to point out in there that I'm pretty sure we did, and refresh my memory if we did it, but you were having the heartburn, but really bad acid reflux and stuff, which was just one of the very, one of few of the many things going on. But, and this is a huge issue, I think, for a lot of people that are putting down a lot of food, and a lot of just bodybuilders in general. I noticed this tons. They get on whatever group on Facebook, hey, I have acid reflux. Nearly every single person in the group tells them to take some kind of, proton pump inhibitor
instead of Pepsin GI and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or some bullshit like that. And and I know there's a couple other coaches that are really good with this stuff too, and they talk about it. It's normally the complete opposite issue. It's
Absolutely.
normally
I was about to say, with me, if I go take a bunch of Tums or something, I'm 10 times worse.
Right.
And it does nothing for me.
The only thing that we did use to help you towards the end, and it was because, we have the whole Pepsin GI, glutamine, aloe vera, apple cider vinegar. We had all that as part of the equation. But at some point in the prep, with certain things you're taking and stuff along that realm, sometimes it just gets bad and it hurts. So I did give a few times I had to give him Zantac 150 just to cool it off immediately. It's not something I want to use a lot, but because we're in, the peak for the show, there's nothing really we can really do at that point. I just want the symptoms to be relieved so he's not in pain.
Right.
And we're talking probably 5 tabs the entire time.
Yeah, the entire prep. Yeah.
In a case like that, like it's a kind of a situation where, you have to get it fixed quickly. But at the same time, like I have another guy right now that I'm working on basically just GI, like that's our consultation. We're literally, he has acid reflux so bad that they thought he had throat cancer. They had to do skin grafts because it burned his esophagus so badly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, his doctor's giving him all these like really, really harsh prescription proton pump inhibitors. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not your doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you not to take your prescription because that's, that's a legal thing and whatever. But my biggest goal with him was re-acidify his stomach. And I had him taking like obscene amounts of betaine, HCl.
Yep. Yep.
Guy, he doesn't fucking.
And what's funny, Austin? I remember you telling me that I would have that in cases you've seen in studies getting up to like 6 to 8 650 milligram tablets at a time. And for me, I still today use 3 to a lot of times 4 with every meal. I mean, that's something I think I'll have to do forever.
Does he have Barrett's esophagus?
Oh man, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. The only thing he told me was it was just acid reflux, and that's what they were treating.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times when it's like basically necrotic like that, with just basically eating away. A lot of times it's Barrett's esophagus, and a lot of times these doctors. I mean, and I'm not saying all doctors are wrong and stuff, but I feel that they are kind of pressured to pump prescriptions as opposed to fixing the issue at the root, and it just makes it worse. Especially with somebody like have like a Barrett's esophagus. So like what you're doing is obviously fixing it, So with that, I'm sure you had them use the zinc carnosine complex and all that stuff too.
Yeah, and it's crazy because of course it doesn't correct itself right away, but
it takes a while.
Right, when it's that bad. But at the same time, it's so counterintuitive because like I said, they're pumping them full of these antacids, and essentially at the end of the day, it will give you some quick relief, but it's actually going to have a rebound effect, and you're going to
exactly. It's worse. It comes back worse when you stop it.
Yep. Yeah. It makes the issue 10 times worse. You end up needing a stronger, pump inhibitor, and at the end of the day, I mean, you're pretty much like it's bad. And the reason I got so into all the GI issues is my mom actually had a bout of throat cancer from GERD. From her GERD was so bad. And she had that, the burping up the acids and stuff, the reflux, and she did. She ended up getting some cancer in her throat, and I'm like, man, I need to research this because I'm noticing so many bodybuilders have this acid reflux. It's so common. And it's like, man, I don't know. I know I might be blown out of proportion, but I feel like so many people are getting mistreatment, and it just goes back to that whole body system things. It's if people could just educate themselves, if they could just, stop reading about trend for a little while and like figure out.
No, exactly though. I 100% agree with you.
It's like, man, if you don't realize how much better that trend will work if everything else fucking works.
No doubt. And I guess I should probably go ahead and back up a little bit because I just realized we've talked about all this and I haven't told anyone what my issues were. I was diagnosed with EOE, so it is an esophagus issue as well. It's an autoimmune allergy type esophagus issue. So, it's funny we're talking about all this and how you're talking about with like the PEPs and everything. Well, that's, these things literally changed my life and my issues, which initially we thought were going to be Crohn's or, like a colitis type thing, ended up being an esophagus issue. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I just realized we never even mentioned that.
Yep, that's definitely relevant. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, a lot of the issues are whether it's Crohn's or whether it's colitis. I mean, they're all inflammatory diseases at root.
Right, exactly. Yep.
That's essentially all of them are. And inflammation, just inflammation in general is, and Joe will agree with this too, is that it's a contributor to every major disease. Every major disease you're going to have.
100%.
Yeah. So, yep. And especially when that inflammation starts becoming systemic, when it starts getting all over the body, I mean, you're definitely going to have issues. But that brought us, so that pretty much covers the whole prep then, doesn't it? I mean, now we're off season. I mean, what are you going to do from here, man?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you said, I mean, there's really no need to talk about the prep up to the universe because it was, I mean, honestly, my diet never changed it was just the same the whole time.
We kept it the same from there and basically just let it tighten him more because we definitely came in tighter from Oklahoma to the universe, but it was just basically consistent repetition,
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's kind of good that we bring that up too because I think a lot of people make changes because you're supposed to rather than you're supposed to. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Like just because you're told to, and on paper, I feel like a lot of coaches, and this is where we go back to that application thing, and you got so many that have all this information but don't really know how to apply it. And in this situation, there was no need to change anything. Cardio stayed 20 minutes; it never changed. Once we had a good baseline diet that was working, and week to week, like I said, once we figured out the refeed needed to be 2 days instead of 1, and this, that, and the other, that last 5 weeks from, 1 to 2 weeks before the Oklahoma till the universe, I mean, literally the diet never changed. It was the exact same minus depletion was mildly pulled down, but even then,
mildly because we ended up having to add back.
Well, and that's what I was about to say is the week of the universe, from a client rather than a coach, I got a little wacky in my own head like we do. And I didn't feel like I was, I had gained weight, so I didn't feel like I was lean enough when I was flat. And Johnny's just laughing at me, and so I asked him if we could deplete a little more that last Wednesday, and we pulled a little bit more food that day. And then that night, he fed me like 12 eggs, a cup of oatmeal, 4 English muffins, still during my depletion because
I looked at him, and he looked to decline so bad that his physique died. And I just said to him, Bud, listen, like I know you wanted to deplete further. I said, but I'm really not comfortable putting you to bed looking like this. So I gave him that meal that we just said and instantly brought him back to life, like from 0% to about 25%. I said, okay, now I'm okay with you going to bed. We'll load you Thursday, Friday, and we'll be good to go. I'm not worried now. But I was like, if you go to, because I know how he burns through sleep. And if I would have put him to bed as flat as he was, I honestly don't know that we would have, been able to load him efficiently Thursday to Friday and have him as, crisp as he needed to be because I probably would have had to push too much food and then his stomach would have got blown out again. So, that's why I definitely wasn't comfortable putting him to bed as, as depleted as he was in that state because I watched him go from as hard as he gets to almost he was so flat that he looked fatter, which, we don't want to get that far when somebody's already peeled inside out.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. That's, yeah, man. I mean, unless Joe has any questions, I don't really have many questions. I mean, yeah, like I said, it was just wanted to get some insight on the whole situation because I think this was a really interesting prep, kind of a shotgun prep for sure. Well, not kind of, it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, man, that actually turned out really, really well.
Well, dude, I mean, just to quickly answer your questions about the future, the goal right now is to go back into a health phase. I feel like that's really important. So, I want to get all my markers back where they need to be and come down for a while. And then, the goal is going to be to plan to push this winter and try to put on another 10 pounds and then do some tier 4 shows next year and see if we can maybe Josh Wade it and get some top 5, top 8 finishes next year in the open class. So we'll see what happens.
That's funny you mentioned Josh because that's exactly who comes to mind.
You know what's funny is because, we have the same last name, so we kind of joke about, we have a hashtag that we put on each other's stuff every now and then. We call it a weight thing. But, but just aside from all that, our physique strengths are very similar. I feel like I have some better qualities in ways than he does, and he's obviously a little bigger and has some things that I don't. But as far as structurally and where our strengths are good, I feel like we're very similar. So, yeah, that's going to be the goal, man. I was going to initially try to pull to 212, but with me to get that live, I lose my quads. And so I guess we're just, like I said, try to put on a little bit more muscle and see if we can make a run at a few shows next year in the open class and see how we do. So we'll see.
You're 35, so I mean, you still have some life in you.
Yeah, I'm in 3 to 4 years, and then it's time to focus on the kids' sports and stuff as he gets 8, 9 years old. But I'm definitely going to make a run and see what I can do. So we'll see.
Oh, you have to. I mean, you can't not.
Yeah, you finally meet that goal. You can't just shut it down there, right?
He already knows I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah. No, Johnny's my biggest fan. Not only is my coach and probably my best, if not one of my best friends for sure. He's also, he believes in me more than anybody. So,
you know what? It's funny because I talk about so many different people. Like, I always tell my wife stuff. She's like, you talk about so many people, I don't remember who fucking talking about. But I was watching the play-by-play on, I think it was like the Maximum Muscle Report on IG, everything. And I fucking threw my pen across the room and jumped up, and I was like, Marcus got his card. I was like, and she's like, who the fuck is Marcus?
Who the fuck is Marcus?
I'm like, don't you remember Marcus? She's like, no.
No, that's funny, man. But hey, I really appreciate that, dude. You're I respect the shit out of you. You helped me. You really helped me more than you know. Like I said, dude, I appreciate everything you've done, all the support, everything else. So, I'll just try not to let you guys down, man. I'm gonna keep doing what I do, and if we can do some shit and get and accomplish some more goals, then so be it. And if I go out in a flame and get my ass whooped, then I guess that happens too. But we'll go down swinging either way. So
you just gotta play those Masters white guy strengths. Get nasty.
Hey, you calling me old again or what?
That's all we got.
Well, Joe, are you still on here? I don't feel like we've had you.
Sorry, yeah, I'm usually chatting away, so you guys have been lucky. I'm usually just talking bollocks over people, but thank you for sharing that. It was a really interesting anecdote, and as Austin said, a lot of it I've been through. So just sitting back and listening to your anecdote has been excellent, man. And congratulations on the pro card as well. I have followed it along, so.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, for sure. Thanks for having us on.
There we go, guys. What an insightful story. I have to say that's been one of my favourite podcasts that we've done so far, even though I did just sit back and I think I said all of about 10 words for the whole podcast, but it was amazing to hear Marcus and Johnny's story and how it all unravelled. And of course, a huge congratulations to Marcus for achieving his IFBB Pro card and for going through all of that journey to get there. So let that be a lesson to you guys that anything can be worked through. Don't give up and focus in on anything negative in your protocol, and you can always fix it and get through it, especially with a great coach like Johnny. So what an awesome conversation and possibly inspiration and motivation for all you guys. Anyway, I'm just going to close this podcast off as usual with a big shout out to our sponsors. Firstly, to the guys over at Mediphorm. That's www.mediphorm.com. The world's first and still the world's best hyaluronic acid site enhancement. I was going to say oil, but of course it's not an oil. Site enhancement product. They've just come out with their RL line, which is rapid loading, so it's a more concentrated form of the hyaluronic acid, and it is the same price. Sam currently has a 30% off going on right now within the group, so you guys within the group, check it out for the discount code. Worth mentioning as well that Mediphorm have just released their YouTube channel, and our very own Austin has done the first video up there explaining what Mediphorm is, what it does and whatnot. So guys, instead of bombarding us, asking us what Mediphorm is, because honestly, genuinely, at least 5 to 10 messages a day about Mediphorm and what it is, go to www.mediphorm.com and the video is right there. It's also been shared in the group a few times already. So yeah, please guys, check it out. Also big shout out to KOMPAK, let's see if I can spell, KOMPAK.store, for all your show day needs, especially you girls out there. You can get everything you need in one personalized package, no stress. Keep that sympathetic nervous system at bay when you're trying to look nice and lean for the stage. You don't need to stress. So also a big shout out to Marcus and Johnny. All their social media and stuff are below. Follow their journeys and go ahead and wish our friend Marcus a big congratulations on achieving his IFBB Pro card. Next Tuesday we are sitting down to record a special episode on Austin's prep, as he is currently 5 days out, so it will be right after his show. He's going to go through his full protocol and what he did on the final weeks, which is something that you don't really hear divulged too much, and for some reason still seems like some kind of, excuse the noise in the background guys if you can hear this, mum and her friend are over in there recounting old times, but anyway, we play it on the fly on this podcast. But yeah, for some reason the peak week protocols still seem to be somewhat of a secret in the bodybuilding world, so we're going to run it all down for you guys and some things for you to think about if you're doing a peak week with yourself or some clients. And then we have big Luke Sando coming on the following week, who's now also a Mediphorm sponsored athlete. So yeah, all exciting stuff coming up guys. So thanks for listening as always. Keep questions, queries, complaints and all of that good stuff coming in to the OPD group, and please do check out all of the links below. Oh, we've also got a new sponsor to announce next week, something really cool bringing to you guys that I know you guys are really going to value. You can probably guess what it is because I've been harping on social media about it, because it's something I've been finding super useful. But you guys are really going to like it. It's a great easy access for you guys for something that is really valuable. So I'm going to stop blabbering on now, and I'll catch you guys next week. Thanks for listening. See you guys.